we're all in the Matrix, and
That's true.
and
Oh, finally somebody watching us. So I know we're actually talking to someone now.
oh, you're so conscientious. If you're joining us in your ear holes at a later date, we appreciate you prioritizing this podcast. It is remarkable. We actually do have a redaction and correction from last week,
We
I'm
like
glad you remember that.
which I will get to.
we like to be as accurate as possible, even when we're not.
Yeah, I mean, some people will call us pedantic or nerdy.
That's a big word.
I know. But
Yeah, Scott can't pronounce that
No.
word. That's why he just called it a big word.
That's right.
but if you're listening in your ear holes, understand that, hey, we're so thankful for you and your listenership and the manner in which this podcast has absolutely spread like wildfire globally. And
Yes.
I'll say something about that here in a hot second, but tell your friends, tell your mom. This is the #1 podcast in the universe as voted on by my mom.
Yes.
So
Unbiased.
totally unbiased.
Yes.
So tell somebody about it. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. That's usually what Jeffrey says, but I took it from him.
That's okay. We're going to jump right into the comments because you took my normal speech.
No problem.
Giaga Jeepers, you're first. Good morning, guys.
Hey, he's got first.
And then Amy Brown saying good morning, guys.
She tried.
She was close. She was close.
Good morning, honey.
And, just so our listeners are aware, this program does go live every Monday at 10:19 a.m. or pretty darn close too.
Yep.
Previously, it was just live on the Book of Faces, and now it is equally live on the YouTubes.
So going forward, I think we start paying attention to who's logging in on YouTube versus Facebook. I've got the counter on the screen. And right now, YouTube's winning.
They are, but nobody's talking.
That's all right.
That's fair.
That's all right. They don't have to talk. But, you two can join us on Monday on either of those platforms if you'd like to weigh in, watch the program, hang out in the chat box, do whatever, as spirit moves you.
See our faces. See the studio.
And with seeing the studio, just so you know, there was, about a month ago, we came back for season 5 here, and we were missing a signature, I Speak Jeep inclination.
We were.
And
But we tasked our camera guy with doing something.
Framing it, trying to
Yes.
figure out how the framing worked.
And he learned how to spatial awareness because we accidentally are crouched over the size.
We crouched over the sides, which makes a really sick T-shirt, which you're wearing today.
Which,
And
if you want one, you should buy one.
you should buy one. They're $50. Do we think the shirt's worth $50? Absolutely not.
No.
But it does go towards supporting this specific podcast. And for that, we thank you. For anybody who did a donation over $50, we have then, retroactively gotten you a T-shirt in the process. But you can still continue to support the podcast, the studio creation. Because of you, because of our listeners, we have plowed back into the business and created a professional enclosure, which is in our service facility.
Yep.
Now it's valuable to note that, somebody brought it up the other day. We could or should be working on Jeeps. And
Yes.
instead, we have 3 employees who are here sharing information with you. And, for that is, a bit of a differentiation of a business model, right? And so while we have obviously the physical application of building Jeeps and selling parts, we're taking the time to bring you, hopefully, cool content to your ears and to your eyes. Now, we tasked you with helping build the sign. And the sign, if you were paying attention, may or may not be located behind Jeffrey and I, behind Grandma's couch.
I think it's a ghost.
What's really fun about it is that Davey literally set it up on a pulse mode, so it looks like the sign is got a heartbeat behind us right now on camera.
Oh, that's fun.
It's just pulsing back there.
I didn't think it was a sign. It's just a black sheet.
So there is a black sheet draped over it. Last week, we didn't even have it turned on. This week, if you are a good, if you've got a keen eye, you might be able to start to make out some of what the sign looks like. And, next week, you'll have to tune in on the lives and actually see the sign in living color.
Yes.
I think it's really super cool is what it is. And I'm very proud of it, and it's very cool. And when we have some open houses here at our facility or one of the parades or something like that, we encourage you to come in, see the studio, check things out, because you helped build it. And without you, we would just be sitting around talking to each other, which is what we do at lunchtime anyways. But this way, it's way more fun with you being involved.
Yep.
So,
Good morning, Daddy Jeep and Chuck Lorre.
good morning. Good morning.
Chuck is saying hashtag Team YouTube, and YouTube is still currently winning, but it's getting close. Facebook's catching up.
Team YouTube. That's funny. That is funny. So we have some information that we have to change from last week.
We should introduce
some-
who Scott is and who I am, though.
Are you sure?
Oh,
I'm not sure. I just feel like it's the
He
right thing
got
to do.
really excited.
I
about
got
the
really
sign.
excited.
Yeah, he
Or
did.
not sign.
I don't know what the heck. Nobody actually
So
cares
that's-
about you guys. So
Who are you?
I'm the maddest mad scientist and
Uh-oh.
maker of coverage for wiper linkage on YJ windshields when they're CJ windshields.
What else
What?
did you make for the podcast studio?
I also made stuff to hold our headphones up so we don't have to hang them precariously on our rigs anymore. That was making Jeff nervous.
Yeah, it was really, really fun little
Jeff
headphone
is so
brackets.
thrilled by these brackets.
They are.
And you were like, "Oh, did you see the present I left you?" And Jeff was like, he came into work and he like about near had a kitty, and it was all he could do from just devoting his entire day to putting them
It was
up.
not an entire day devoted to that.
All right, all right, go ahead. Well, who are you? What were you?
I don't
gonna
even
say?
know anymore.
Exactly.
I'm Jeff.
The painter and detailer.
Jeff the builder.
Yeah, Jeff the builder.
Jeff the builder.
of headphone hangers.
Yeah.
Goodness. Oh my goodness.
We are looking for someone to sing Jeff the Builder song. Just sing out in the
which
universe.
is not me.
No.
No.
Which is not me. So what's going on for either Jeff the builder or the mad scientist?
Well, we had a busy weekend as always, as the SFJ model is to try to pack as much life into a 24-hour stint as you possibly can.
All the life.
So after I got off work here, went home and finished winterizing my camper, and then tried to maneuver things. Ended up having an incident with a certain red Chevy truck in the building. So then I got my wife out there to obviously help me move stuff around so there was no more incidents. The truck is due for its third set of mirrors now.
No.
Oh no. Oh no.
Uh,
Oh, Scott.
but stuff happens, and that's a next year problem. So that's fine. It's a pasture
next year
mirror.
problem.
Uh,
It's a next
it's amazing how fast that door opening, jumps.
jumps at you.
You have plenty of room, and then suddenly it's like, "Hey, mirror, what's up?"
Oh,
So that's fine.
jumps out at you.
But we got the truck. Amy's truck and my truck are cuddling, and we got the camper put away, and we haven't yet done anything with the 7 or the 36. We're gonna cruise it through the fall a little bit longer with those, but I wasn't driving the red truck very much, so figured it's one less thing on my plate, because sometimes we go from having really nice days to snow and it's a mad dash. So I don't want to be in that mad dash.
Sure.
Actually fits in good if you're not listening to our other podcasts. You should be, because I get a first-hand sneak preview, and today's topic was very good about seeing where you need to do things for yourself, and that's what me doing that. So
Yeah, and that's the American Hustle podcast Jeffrey and I do, which is a cool one. And you're right. It's about today's podcast was about knowing when you need to refuel yourself. Right?
Yes.
and do things appropriate for yourself. And the other thing we did was on Sunday, we know that our family does better if we go to the beach or the water or something outside. So that's what we did. We went ahead and said to heck with the possibility of rain. Went ahead and went down there, found a bunch of beach class, had a nice relaxing time. Sky was beautiful. If you're on my Facebook, you got to see pictures of that.
It is
So,
gorgeous. All weekend we had amazing sunsets.
we did.
Yeah.
Awesome
Amazing
sunsets. So that was my weekend in a nutshell. I am working on moving stuff around in the sheet metal shop still, blagging everything down, running airline, and we'll be updating that soon. So
With your hardwood inspired, century old,
yes,
new to you brake.
yes.
Love it. Love it. Jeffrey, you had a big weekend, man.
I
did,
but I'm going to go to the comments real quick because we've got Keith Dart saying morning, guys, and Michael Gudis saying good morning, SFJ crew.
Good morning to all of you. Absolutely.
And Facebook took the lead, by the way.
Uh-oh.
So
Step up, YouTube. Step up.
Obviously, I've talked about the nonprofit, Heberly's Heartstrings, where we're a lending library for music instruments in Erie County, Pennsylvania. This weekend on Saturday, we were at Room 33, which is a nice little speakeasy, mafia-esque style bar.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a competition where we had 15 artists competing for cash, playing cover music. It was a really good turnout. In fact, we knew the venue was going to be too small for what we were doing, but we did it there anyways. And we had many people come in, realize there was no tables available, go grab food, and then come back so that they could actually still enjoy
part of the music event itself.
So that went off really well. Great opportunity to meet some great people, hear amazing talent, of course. And overall, it was just an absolute blast. The nice thing about it is that's our third time doing this competition. It has actually grown so much that next year we're making a 2-day festival in downtown Erie.
Right.
So
it's pretty cool.
All the ducks are in a row for that already. We've already got the permission of the city to close a street down for it. So really cool things in the works for next year. So that was the bulk of the weekend and what I was doing and planning for and running around like crazy getting ready for. But Sunday, my opportunity to kind of refuel and do something with the family was I had ordered for my wife and I a mystery crime solving date box.
Yes, I was excited to hear about this.
So that actually came in last week, and because of the event, we hadn't had an opportunity to sit down and do it. So Sunday, we took the time to go through that, and I got to say, it was really fun. There was 10 different clues that you had to solve this initial clue, and it worked with an online app. So you had to go in and you'd have to select from the app like one of 50 different locations. And if it wasn't the right location, it would tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
And if it was the right location, you would get the next clue.
Huh.
And then that clue would tie into an activity that you had to do. And then you do this activity, whether it be solving a puzzle, solving a riddle, rearranging pieces,
Sure.
wordplay. There was all different ones, and it was each one was unique in itself. And then once you got done with all of them, the next clues, what each step of the way was a color by number, basically. And that color by number, when it was done, because it was the box we did was based out of Paris. It was an art gallery crime kind of thing from the Louvre, and so we were thinking it was going to be an art piece that we were color by number. No, it ended up being a location, and we were looking at this, and it was a landmark location, and that was the actual final piece. You had to figure out the landmark location and put it in exactly right into the puzzle box online, and it would give you the winning thing.
So I hear this is a 10/10 recommend on your part?
Absolutely.
How cool.
It was really fun. It specifically if you're into doing puzzles or solving things.
Sure. I did an escape room a couple weeks ago for
I love
somebody
escape
else's
rooms.
Birthday party, and I'm hooked now. I'm totally hooked.
I'm telling you got to try this. It's like you're
well,
at home
that's what
escape room.
Yeah, that's what it makes me think of. You know what I mean? I think we should do an SFJ 4x4 escape room.
That'd be fun.
So for myself, I think I'll start with the correction. Obviously, I made an outlandish statement last week. If you were tuned in, you would have heard that I had said that we were in 35 countries globally. And so I made that illustrious claim based on some statistics that I believe to be true
Mm-hmm.
around January. And
so since then,
And Jeff and his true Jeff nature had to go on and
pull the analytics.
Yes, check.
I wasn't even
facts.
looking at that. I honestly believed it was 35. I was looking to see how our downloads were trending now that we're back actively doing the show. And that statistic popped up.
And when
but
we say back actively, we just took a 6-week hiatus.
Yeah.
If you don't know, now you know.
Yeah, we took a 6-week break to build the studio. And when we came back, I hadn't actually looked at where we were trending versus during the break, which surprisingly, a lot of you must have just went and binge watched during the break, because our 6-week break, we didn't lose a lot of downloads per week.
Right.
It was interesting.
We actually probably gained some new people in the process or something.
Correct. And then going forward, obviously we're trending up again. But I happen to notice that we were both mistaken on the 35 countries. We're in 61 countries.
61 countries.
But
the I Speak Jeep podcast.
Yeah. To take it even a step further than that, that means that we're actually in 6 of 7 continents.
So we have a call to action.
Call to action. Who's going
to Antarctica?
Going to Antarctica.
I need someone to go to Antarctica and just download a couple episodes.
Yes.
So we can say we're in all 7 continents.
And if we get photo proof, there's probably something we could do for you.
it's something we'll do for you. I don't know what, but we'll do something bodacious, but for sure. We are in 6 out of 7 continents.
Yes.
That's
that
insane.
Is fantastic. And that is all thanks to you, our listeners.
And that
right?
then asked a new question me and Jeff were talking about. What does Chinese translated Neil sound like?
We are very curious. If the assumption is that if you're listening to it in one of those countries that doesn't speak English primarily, that there's a translation AI on the episodes, because of the transcript is AI generated and everything nowadays. So we're curious.
Yes.
What AI Neil or AI Scott or myself
we have
sound
deep
like.
questions we need answered.
We've got so many questions when it comes to and my bad accents. And
Right.
do they come across
they get
as bad
better?
accents? Do they get better?
Is he talking like a Minnesotan in all the different countries?
Yes.
I had to tell a story. So our redaction, my weekend was, fantastic and chaotic, and, lots of Jeep adventures, and, again, because, my wife and I drive Jeeps everywhere we go, and in all things we do. So, lots of cool Jeep adventures. I managed to squeeze my wife's Jeep through downtown Cleveland, an incredibly busy time. It makes me think of you wiping your mirrors off, because I squeezed Jen's mall crawler into a parking spot in a parking garage that no vehicle would ever think of going into.
Was it a compact spot?
It was not, because I'm not that guy. But there's a pillar taking up 2 feet of the spot.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted, because I mean, arguably, in a sense, we are individuals who get to off-road for a living, you know? And so I don't care if it's, kind of rural or urban wheeling. I'd still wheeling to me. And so I put Jen's tire, I mean, we're talking a half an inch at most from this concrete barrier.
That's where it landed after he rode up onto it and it dropped.
Potentially. But, I put her Jeep in such a way that there was actually only one way in and out. Now, because I had, roughly 24 inches, and Jennifer's and the tire was basically touching it, I had to get out of the vehicle and kind of like go around the back and snake through some other, parked vehicles. But it worked out, perfectly as far as I'm concerned. Worked on the new property, the homestead property. It was unfortunate, but it's real. It'll be 3 years this November that we broke ground on the home build. But as anything that we've done,
Takes time.
Anything worth doing is worth doing right. And since we are building the house and the property ourselves, it takes time, but had a good time doing that. Very, very fulfilling weekend of Jeep and personal pursuits. So,
and I think the other aspect is not just only does it take time to do that, but there's a lot of learning involved in doing that.
Oh, tons and
that takes, even more time to learn the process so that you can do it right. And
Yes.
and you're doing that.
Yeah. And it's, it makes me feel, pretty good. And on top of things, we have yet to stop living life. You know what I mean? So we are going out to events. We're still participating in all of our kids' activities. We're at almost all their practices and all their games. And, just fortunate for the fact that we can be doing all of that kind of stuff. So, all right. We have a good program in front of everyone. We are continuing our race series conversation.
And speaking of that, did you bring your activity that you were talking about?
I did not finish it.
Oh,
I did not finish it. I needed to print it out.
As a cliffhanger for next week, then.
Yes. Yep. I had an activity prepared for the guys, and I did not finish and print it. So it will exist in the cosmos until next week.
Okay.
It was a good one. And you're going to want to hang in there for it. So
that's all right. We've got enough to talk about between Scott's topic and mine.
Yeah, because apparently I was told that I talked too much about vintage race vehicles
You got excited.
last week. Let me just say, so when obviously in my bad decision making in life, I got really excited by Comanche pickup trucks over the weekend. Not that I'm in any way, shape, or form in a position to purchase a Comanche.
Did you go to the auction?
I did not go to the auction.
Do we know how much it sold for?
We don't know anything about it. No.
We need to find out.
More cliffhangers.
I compartmentalized and decided not to even to set myself up for failure in that situation.
It was a wise choice.
Yeah. There was a beautiful truck for sale not too far from us in a state was selling a full size, a J truck, if you will. So, but anyways, I got inspired by Comanches, and there's a guy in Kentucky. We actually had a customer stop in the other day. He bought a Comanche out of Kentucky, brought it up here. It's amazing. First of all, it's important to know that like Scott and I have owned a number of Comanches. I think the most that I ever paid for a Comanche was around like $500, right? Back in the day, you could buy a pickup truck for $500 to $1,000.
And we got to put some qualifiers on this. He then daily drove this to Pittsburgh for 2 years.
2 years. I actually and let's tell the story as it is. I actually paid $300 for it at a garage sale.
Yes,
it was listed at $500, and I paid $300 for it at a garage sale. And then I daily drove it for 2 years, and eventually that was in and through Pittsburgh, and then I moved about 45 minutes north of Pittsburgh, and so I had about a 35 minute commute on the highway before I got into town.
Yep.
And that was really the doozy for that little Renix 4.0.
Yes.
Because I'd have to stop part way and put oil in the engine.
Which is obviously a normal occurrence.
Yeah. I would stop at that time. Obviously, I was not full-time pursuit of an automotive career, but I would stop at Sam's Club and I would buy the cheapest motor oil they possibly had, and I just lived in the bed of the truck so that I could just top it off constantly, because it leaked like a broken fish tank and it burnt oil and all that kind of good stuff. But I paid $300 for it at a garage sale, so whatever.
And in today's market, that truck was actually pretty nice.
That truck was really nice by today's market standards, which is then part of my rub at the moment is that Comanches in similar condition are bringing around $5,000.
Yes.
And regularly you're buying a good Comanche between $7,500 and $10,000.
Yes.
And I'm blown away because there was a point in time that S10 square body S10s, square body Ford Rangers, Comanche pickup trucks, throw in a Mazda, maybe a Nissan hardbody. You could get one of those for under $1,000 and drive the wheels off of it.
Yep.
Right. And no more is that the case. But what the funny part of the whole my perusing the interwebs was the fact that an individual who is the first owner, one owner Comanche in Kentucky, 5-speed. It's a 6-cylinder 5-speed, so 4.0 5-speed.
4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive?
So the thing is, I don't remember on this one. So I don't want to make the story. I don't want to make the fish any bigger than it already is.
Yeah, it's a story,
right?
What's a story without some elaboration?
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So it has a pappy cap on it. It has a camper cap on it.
Expect nothing less.
Nothing less, right? $6,000. And I just everything in my soul says that I need that truck, right? Rust free, Kentucky, blah blah blah. And he has the original window sticker. But I think the important piece for me, or the funny piece for me,
what year was it?
89 as well, 89, 90. And I think the funny / important piece for me was that the individual was so thrilled because it's a performance machine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's peppy.
It is.
And it had 175 horsepower.
Yes.
I mean, and he made sure to put that in the listing.
Well, that's big news.
That was big horsepower. You know what I mean?
And I have to, so I have a fact that's been burning a hole in my pocket for 2 weeks now.
Yes.
And this is just a perfect lead in for this. So what's the world's fastest 4.0?
The world's fastest 4.0. There's a guy who all he does is build performance 4.0s.
Well, that's cheating.
Oh.
You're going with an OE 4.0.
You're talking about an OE
so the
built?
world's fastest built to show the performance of the 4.0 in 87. So we got to put this perspective.
Oh, okay.
This is the first year of the 4-liter. Renix, French is translating to English, then it's translating to like redneck to make this truck go fast.
I was about to do a terrible French impression. Oui. What you said.
Redneck French.
Redneck French. And nothing has spoken to my soul more, I think,
That's what we do, people.
My cruddy 87 YJ with my Renault.
Yes.
BA10 transmission.
Yes.
All right.
Oh boy.
So it set the land speed record.
Well, we're not in France anymore.
No, they just canceled us. We've been canceled in French. Well, that I speak Jeep.
Yes.
Honestly, this might be one of your better impressions.
It is.
Woo! Yeah.
Now we're definitely canceled.
So anyway, it set the land speed record at Bonneville at a smoking 141 miles an hour in a Comanche.
Ooh.
With it, and that something I need to kind of explain because I didn't know this for a long time, and I'm about as car guy as you can get. So when you race at Bonneville and you set a record, you have to do it and then you have to repeat it. So you can't just go up there and like max out the thing, blow the motor up, and that's your record. That's not how that works.
Interesting. I did not know that either.
So they actually have a top speed of 146, but the record is 141 because that's what they could repeat. So I don't know what happened to it after the 146 mile an hour.
gave all it could.
It could.
Lost those 5 horsepurs.
But that I thought that was just too fun not to share when I was looking up race Comanches. So there was an 87 Comanche 4.0 that went almost 150 miles an hour on Bonneville.
Now, you and I have driven some Comanches in our life.
That guy had gonads of steel.
They were the size of Texas.
That truck was hauling all it could.
Granted,
all of ours, I paid $350 for my Comanche. So, got to put it in perspective. Well, by the time we got them, they had seen some things.
They were pretty long in the tooth.
Yeah. But
I'm going to just jump back to the comments real quick. Roy is saying good morning.
Morning, Roy.
But also, Daddy Jeep is saying, I didn't think the 4.0 came out until 89.
No.
Nope. 87.
87.
And that's when the XJ and MJ got the firewall mod and radiator mod and hood mod. So useless Jeep fact, you actually have an 84 to 86 hood, and then you have an 87 up hood. Because originally the XJ was designed for a GM V6 or
Good over there?
or 2.5 4-cylinder.
And understand. So the customer came in last week, and he was in 85, and he special ordered or purchased brand new a Comanche, and it had the 2.8 V6 in it, and he loved it. He thought it was the cat's meow. And
you either had a good one that ran forever, or you had one that left you stranded. There was a long early Scott joke that every square body S10 Blazer or truck with a cherry picker or
this was a
engine
good
crane
story until you
in front of the bumper, sitting in someone's driveway for 3 months, was a 2.8.
It was a 2.8.
Yeah.
You know what it wasn't? It wasn't a 4.3.
No.
Because, and you know what you couldn't do is you couldn't put a 4.3 easily
where a
2.8 was.
Yes.
And that is your most useless Jeep GM fact for the day, is that despite the fact that they produced at the exact same time a 2.8 V6 and a 4.3 V6, you could not actually interchange them easily.
No.
Did some, intentioned individuals pull it off? Probably. I know they did.
At that point, you just put a V8 in it and get it over with.
At that point, you put a V8 in it, But yeah, so the Cherokee and then initially the Comanche had the V6ers.
And that makes me think, remember all the reminiscing phone calls we used to get? Hey, I bought a 4-cylinder Jeep. Can I swap it to a 4.0 easily?
No, I don't want to talk about it. No, I don't want to talk about that either.
That was like
that's
once a
gonna take
week.
us off that's going to take us way off the path. We're already partially off.
We are.
But the Comanche, and I think what's interesting is our friend Jerry Huber was at the assembly plant. Now, I don't know that they were building the Comanches at that time. I'm not sure how those plants worked, and I would love for him to reach out to me at some point in time and kind of let me know whether or not his plant was making the Comanche. I don't know where they were coming out of. I know his plant was making the Wrangler for sure in 87.
I would assume it would have been on the same line as the Cherokee.
Yeah, and I just don't know well enough as far as the actual manufacturing at that time over there in
we need some
Ohio.
Pictures of
I'm just thinking it's kind
on
of
the
cool.
line.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking it's
would be
cool
cool.
that the Bonneville, the Salt Flats, is
Yeah.
an 87 Comanche in his association with that time frame. And what I think is cool, and we're try and cover, kind of pretty much 87 to current day ish. Jeep.
I even have a stat for the future.
Ooh. Jeep as an entity dips their toes into the global race, right? We talked last week about Americans, global as well, loving racing since it kind of, since it came out and we could race things, we did race things.
Well, you're right. Well, it's race on Sunday, sell on Monday. That was a literally saying that they had. Like, you wanted to see your car, your truck on the circuit, at the racetrack on Sunday, got you excited. Monday, you're in the dealership wanting to buy your version of that. Kind of live vicariously through them.
Scott's trying big words.
I love it when he does big words for us and for all of you listeners at home.
Do my best.
Yes. So what do they do? Because I love this race circuit that they get into.
I would love to know more of how this was developed, because I have a feeling it had to be like around a campfire.
I want to know, where were they sitting?
Yeah.
That they thought this is a good idea, guys.
And I'm sure it was drawn on a napkin first.
You know what we should do after 50 years of making utility vehicles that haul firewood and go off road?
It should be like, well, we all like racing, and we're America, so we like our pickup trucks.
Pick them up trucks.
And what we should do is we should race them.
But not race cool ones.
No, we should race all mini trucks.
Mini trucks with 4 cylinders.
With 4 cylinders as a requirement. And we want it to be as off the lot as possible. So it was the CCA Race Truck Series. It ran from 87 to 91. Obviously, Jeep just did a blistering lap at Bonneville, so they were like, what's up?
That's right. The same guy with the gonads the size of Texas was like, I can do this.
Yeah. So the SCCA Race Truck Challenge in 87 had 9 races. And And the winner of the 87 was a Nissan D21.
That's a cool truck.
So in 88, there was 11 races, so up from 9. Comanche took it home in 88. 89, Nissan battled it back out and got winner for that. 90, the Mazda B2000 took the win.
Oof.
And in 91, a Ford Ranger finally did what it could.
Ford Ranger.
So
now, are these are the cool painted Comanches, right?
Yes.
We should give our listeners this idea, like a vision of what that truck looked like.
it was a stripper model. No radio, no heater, no anything. Crank windows, 4-cylinder, just bare bones as you could get. And then they went and put cool diffusers on the front.
Yes.
Put up a really cool sticker package. Deleted the headlights because where we're going, we don't need headlights.
We don't need headlights.
So mods allowed on this stripper base model 4-cylinder standard shift pick 'em up truck. Stiffer bushings, better shocks, some suspension tweaks, as long as 8 inches were between the rocker panels and the ground. Because we're pickup trucks.
Right.
We're going where pickup trucks go. The 4-cylinder had to be left bone stock, but could be blueprinted.
So air quotes. For those listening at home, he air quoted.
So I want to know, well, who race shop while they're building like Donovan Hemis over here are blueprinting a 151 Jeep 4-cylinder over here?
I can't imagine.
And rubbing the special juices on it to make it all skunk works fast.
Skunk works.
So they were obviously they had to have full roll cages, race seats, and wheels because we want the redneck to make it home. And this is a full list of trucks that race because obviously some of them did not place. We had Nissans, obviously, Jeeps, Fords, Dodges. So there was Dakotas running around there. Mitsubishi, Isuzu, Toyota, Chevy, right at the end, tried to get in on there. Obviously not well.
Nope.
The 2.8 was, or not 2.8.
Not even 2.8.
The 4-cylinder was blown up on the side or somewhere in the Mazda. It was 25 laps, but could be more or less depending on the track because they were trying to go at 50 miles. That was their qualifier.
They were trying
So the Ford that won never ran again after those 50 miles?
I guarantee it.
Legend has it, it's still on the side of the road now.
So this is really the funniest part, I thought, is because we're running stock 4-cylinders, most of these barely had 100 horsepower.
Yep.
So the Isuzu was the lowest horsepower. Toyota and Nissan were the middle of the pack, but still nowhere near. And then obviously Jeep, Ford, Dodge, Mitsubishi, Chevy, and Mazda all were with around 120-ish.
Blistering 120 horsepower.
Which I think that's maybe at the starting gate they had that. But after like 10 miles, there was no way.
After the oil warmed up and the rings faded, it all dropped.
So because I'm obviously sure that the Isuzu people were mad at the choices that were made. They whined and they added 200 pounds to the faster trucks to try to make it more fair. So not only are we now racing a brick with a 4-cylinder with a weak 5-speed transmission, or maybe a 4-speed because we're base model, we don't know.
Right.
Rear drum brakes. And the Comanches, mind you, have a beam axle in the front. So we have a tube with knuckles on it and brakes.
Yep.
Obviously, really technical, fancy race stuff there. And this is the other part I thought was really fun. Celine was behind the Rangers.
Oh, of course they were.
How do someone that owns a Celine Mustang?
No, you know what? That was they had Celine. They were in the boardroom, and it was the director, the GM at that time, was mad at somebody.
Yes,
and was like, "You're getting the pickup truck class."
Yes,
you know, they're like, "You go work in the corner, do that."
Yeah. So obviously the race on Sunday, sell on Monday. Jeep is wise of that. And because of the race series, the Comanche Eliminator was debuted from 88 to 92. It was a 2-wheel drive street warrior with a blistering 177 horsepower, 224 foot-pounds of Torxids.
Yep.
4-liter.
Yep.
Well, I know you
Because-
said Torx wrong on purpose,
Yes.
but the debuted one was perfect.
Yeah.
Debut. It debuted.
I'm saying debuted from now on. If
obviously-
you call
I
me,
saw the look
if
on
you
your
call
face,
me
and I was
for
like,
a
oh, boy.
consult, folks, and I say debuted, just know I'm doing
Yeah, it's
it.
a Scottism.
It's a Scottism.
So obviously none of our trucks were the cool Eliminator
So
package. We
so
lusted
I
that.
had. Well, the funny thing is, I would have told you that I had that black one. It didn't have an engine, but that was a 2.5 truck.
That was a sport truck.
It was a sport truck.
Yep.
You're right. You're
Yeah,
right.
we shared that one.
We didn't share that one, did we?
Yeah.
We shared so many.
A lot of
Sharing is
vehicles.
caring. So yeah, I had a Pioneer package.
Mhm.
We had the sport truck.
Yep.
And I
And
don't
then
know.
I had a HO
You had the 92.
92, last of the Mohicans.
You
That
know what I
truck
thought was
awesome.
funny is that there was a 92 for sale on the their marketplace, and it's really not that more. It is literally cheaper than some of the other ones.
Oh,
And I thought to
get my
myself,
heart going.
yeah, I thought to myself, do people not care anymore? Like I wonder.
I care.
I know. I mean, it was actually cheaper, and it was pretty clean. And I thought, man, that's a good truck there. I think it's fun, or it's cool. Now they did make for this race program, there was something like did it say in your research how many they made? It was only like 8 to like 12 trucks that they made.
They did
for
not
this race
actually
circuit.
have stats on that. Surprisingly, there was very little specific Comanche information on this. If you research just SCCA Comanche, you get the cool pictures,
Right.
and that's about it. All this great information was from Haggerty, but it was over the entirety of the race series. And due to us only winning in 88, there wasn't a ton of information.
I love that he said us, right?
Yeah.
Because we're a Jeep specific
Right.
business and podcast.
Got-
So like
gotta
that's
call
our
it.
home team.
Home
you
team.
know?
That's right.
Home team.
Yeah.
There was on Comanche Club or on Naxja, and don't quote me on either one. There was somebody, a young Scott Brown, who went down the rabbit hole.
So
and-
there was somebody that was recreating a race truck for the street.
Yes.
In the livery and everything that the race trucks were. I did not go
I'm
down.
not sure what he was saying.
Scott, I'm struggling today.
Scottisms.
You're.
I'm just here.
I feel like he was painting this morning. I
No, that's the problem. He wasn't painting.
wasn't painting. Okay,
I'm just owning who I am.
that's
it is
right.
what it is.
That's right.
A lot of stuff going
It's
on.
only
up
a
here.
matter of time before he comes in and does the podcast barefoot. I'm just saying.
I'm surprised it hasn't
I am
happened
surprised it hasn't happened.
yet.
yet.
You've accepted the
Jeff,
Crocs.
quit breaking the studio. Why
Nobody
is your
would have
mic
known if
stand-
you would have said anything.
Why is your mic stand trying to jettison across the room?
I was so smooth at saving that. Nobody would have even
I
known.
didn't even know.
See?
But now I do.
Now everybody knows. All right, so it's Scott. We are off the tracks. We are off.
All
the
four
tracks.
tires are in the
Crash and
middle of the
burn.
But
We're
anyway-
racing. We're on. We're the
Anyway,
full
I did
flats.
not research that article that came up because he was reproducing it, and sometimes people do their own thing.
They do. Oh, I know factually he was doing his own thing in the process. I just remember there being a thread somewhere that had a statistic of how many trucks that Jeep had actually made in the course of that 3 or 4 years. And it was something like 6, 8, 13 or something like that. You know what I mean? And they made these trucks. I have always loved the old school race rigs, like the trailers and the old trucks. And because now, I mean, if you're into the racing, or even if you go to a big Jeep show, we're pulling in with full sleeper trucks and a full enclosed, trailer, the big outfits.
Right.
Back then, race cars, your most illustrious race cars were oftentimes on like a wedge back
Yep.
of a bullnose type truck or something.
Even
And-
just a flat car trailer with a
Flat
tire
car-
rack on the front.
and honestly, some of those car trailers at that time had just single axle on there with
Yep.
one time. I mean,
Yeah.
it was amazing what these guys and gals did to go racing, because we were such a world not constrained by the legalities and preventative this, that, and the third. Everything they did was into that race vehicle.
100%.
So we go from the Comanche era of racing. Were there any race Cherokees that you saw? I really thought there was
none.
But...
Obviously, we have to talk 2 seconds about Jeep Speed. That's a big Comanche, or not Comanche, Cherokee race series where you take your old, hopefully not rusted out XJ and cage it and get rid of the lights, because where we're going, you don't need those.
Nope.
Long travel suspension, and then we beat it through the desert, which is still currently, to my knowledge, going on. But nothing really exciting other than that. Like I said, it was really honestly surprising how little information specifically on race MJs and XJs there was.
Well,
I was actually panicked until I was like, okay, I've learned, search one thing, okay, come up dead end, search another way, try a couple different words, and once I put in this SCCA, boom, found the article.
Found a lot of good information.
But other than that, there wasn't much. So if you know, obviously let us know, because we're nerds on that information.
Yeah,
we love to know it.
Yeah, if you have some more insider insight, some old pictures, some old stories from that time frame.
And I would love to see one of these trucks on the trailer behind the tow rig. Like, what did they tow it with? Was it a J truck? I don't know.
That would have been too cool.
That would have been awesome.
I remember seeing some picture with them in front of a race trailer. It wasn't enclosed. It was like a semi rig. And I remember seeing a picture of like a handful of these trucks posed somewhere. And it's valuable to note that if you're joining us this week, you might want to go back and hear. Last week we talked a lot of like the off-road race series and the drags and the hill climbs and stuff like that.
This was a little bit more corporate behind you, kind of helping out a little bit, which you needed, because the poor 4-cylinder and the 4-speed and the Dana 35er axle. Whew. How many
not exactly a performance machine.
How many did those go through?
And I think that it's valuable to note that speed has never been a big part of the Jeep branding, right? The go fast, the big engine.
It's like we flirt with it every 10 years or so.
That is exactly correct, and I think we're working to segue into Jeffrey's portion of this, but. Basically, we come out of that time frame, and obviously, as we talked last week, we had more of your CJ inspired race vehicles, your drags, your off-road race courses, short wheelbase that they then extended, or that kind of stuff. With the Comanche and the Cherokee, if you're unaware, that was a unit body construction. That was Jeep's first foray into unibody work itself. Now, you can make an argument for the AMC Eagle and so on and so forth, but we're talking about Jeep branded unibody construction.
Yep.
So there was a big misnomer out there among the enthusiast crowd that you shouldn't be using unibody vehicles for illustrious pursuits. You shouldn't be off-roading them. You shouldn't be racing them, so on and so forth. Understand that the vast majority of vehicles on the road in today's standards are all unibody construction.
Yep.
So realistically, just because we were raised under the mantra of a full frame vehicle and a steel body would not necessarily make the Cherokee or Comanche less desirable. Our lack of knowledge as automotive enthusiasts and the professional community, that is what inhibited the furthering, the push on those vehicles. Now, when you come to a full frame vehicle and a steel body, that creates weight.
Yep.
And so the fast cars that we're traditionally used to seeing in the race circuits and muscle cars and so on and so forth, they are inevitably just created different than a Jeep construction. When the engineer sits down to engineer a Jeep, they engineer it for the purpose that you can ford water, go over rocks, you can go off the beaten path, and then, reasonably drive 50, 60 miles per hour on the highway. That was what their intention was. Going fast was, never part of the equation. And so, yeah, you had a couple people who ripped out the power plants and threw V8s in them for cool factor, but it wasn't a big part of our community until the mid to late 90s.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, we started to flirt with that V8 again. We started to let America sing.
Yes. And what he's alluding to is in 1998, we had a Grand Cherokee, and we had flirted with the idea of doing V8s with them with a 5.2, which was terrible.
Terrible engine, terrible design. Different than the Magnum series, right? And
they were a Magnum.
Well, they were different than the pick-em-up truck 5.2s and 5.9s.
It's always been
a source of contention.
Yes, a source of contention. And problem with that is, for those that don't know, trying to stuff a V8 in a cargo, or not cargo area, in an engine compartment that was designed for a different thing, is a challenge. And
Correct.
one of the challenges with a ZJ is hood to intake clearance. So they did some really creative, I mean, we're talking 1/2 inch to 1 inch tall snorkel on top of that plenum to get the air in there.
Mm-hmm.
So while they were Magnums, they had to do some stuff to make them, the engine mounts work and accessories work that were kind of made them more specific things. I'm sure once you get down to a certain building block, they start to be more the same, but there's other stuff.
By 98, they had this idea. They knew they were killing the ZJ because of what Jeffrey will talk about is the release of the Dub J. But they knew they were killing it, and so this...
What's the best way to let something go off into the sunset?
You got to go out on a high note.
Yes.
You got to go out on the championship win.
So
right?
They did what was called the 5.9 Limited, and for some reason, I don't know, I've seen this over and over and over again, when we're going to have lots of Hirschpers, we got to make it all-wheel drive, because obviously we can't trust you with burnouts.
No,
we got to make that impossible. And they're still doing it.
Such a confusing thing, because they still do it with the 392s.
Right.
I don't understand it.
Like, what are you doing?
That's where the bean counters and the legal department win against the American people.
You immediately give us some Hirschpers, and then you immediately make it heavier.
Yeah.
Why?
and slower and more drag resistance, more friction.
Yeah.
It's infuriating.
And on top of it, because it's a Grand, so every 5.9 Limited I've seen has had all the options. You know, it tells you when your lights are out, it has full leather, moonroof. We're just packing on the porkage.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're describing my Dub J that I had.
They had their own special wheels. They had a special grill. They had a special hood with some cool hood vents.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had a special, like, body skirt package, if I remember right, and bumpers.
Now, many of them were just your standard grocery getter, and then were made into off-road rigs, or just your standard runabout.
Yep.
I did some years ago see a individual selling one that had a performance suspension. Mm-hmm. Long story short, he built it with, and he had a build sheet with it. And sometimes I think in our industry we get a little dealer options versus factory options.
Yep.
And so I don't know who did what along the way, but the way that the seller had presented it was that basically this was the granddaddy of the SRT8. Mm-hmm. So there was a 98 Limited, but instead of being a standard grocery getter or an off-road rig, that this was actually race inspired.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about that. So if one of our listeners does and they want to share with us, we'd love to hear from you about that. But this individual who was selling this under the pretense that this was a limited production run of the 98 ZJ with the 5.9. And instead of it being your standard grocery getter or off-road 4x4, that this was actually tuned from either the dealer or the factory. And it had a sport tune suspension, it had a particular exhaust package, it had a fascia or flaring kit that was actually different than the standard one we see. It was super cool, and always wanted to know more about it. And again, we see crazy stuff on the interwebs all the time, so take that with a grain of salt. But they eventually kill the ZJ, and they give us what, Jeffrey?
The Dub J, which had a 4.7 high output.
I don't know what's worse, the
V8.
2.8 or Jeffrey's 4.7
Wait.
HO.
It toted 265 horsepower
Woo!
and 325 pounds a foot for torque.
Yeah, that's not bad actually.
It's okay.
If the engine
but it was
stays
also
together.
all-wheel drive.
Yep.
So,
Can't be trusted.
yep.
And the something we forgot to mention, but we need to go back and mention and then talk about how they continued it on. They decided with the Limited it needed a heavier duty rear axle, so they're like, we need to put a 44 in this thing, but we're not going to do it the right way. We're going to make it 44A,
Yeah.
which means aluminum, because we've added all the pork. We need to take weight
We
off.
have to lower the weight
Obviously.
somewhere.
And we're all-wheel drive, so we're not going to break it. And they continued that on in the Dub J because it was a great idea. Must continue.
They do anything good with the Dub J?
No. It was actually, it really was a comfortable ride, but it had all the engine problems.
Yeah.
I mean, the best thing you can
Electrical
do with a Dub
Electrical
J,
problems, constant electrical problems.
the best thing you can do with a Dub J is what Daddy Jeep is doing with his Dub J.
Absolutely.
You know, at this point, you know, they're a great wheeling rig. You rip all the stuff out of it and make it like flip a bunch of toggle switches and you go out wheeling. That's the best thing you can do.
Yes.
They're still cool looking. I'm conflicted by that.
I
you know?
really did enjoy mine, and it really did make great road trips. It was a comfortable ride. The heated leather seats, you know, you had the amenities that Scott was talking about with the
Yeah.
ZJs.
Me and my wife owned a 2000 WJ. It was great for on the road. It was very comfortable. It was a safe feeling vehicle, but all those things my Gladiator does for me, and it's much better.
Correct.
So-
Yeah.
Correct.
And it is important to note, while I have absolutely no appreciation for the Dub Js, where I can kind of put it on its little pedestal is that everything we know in the JK community and therefore built upon for the JL JT series came from the Dub J, from the Grands.
From the oopses they made with that.
Yeah. So kudos to our engineers for learning their lessons and continuing to improve and reinvest in their product.
So, on to the next one. When do you guys believe the SRT8 first came out?
Did it come out in 05?
07, 08.
So, 05 was when it was teased, and it was first started production in 06.
Oh, okay.
I remember something in 07, 08, but yeah, same difference.
Well, if it started production 06, it probably was about
That's
Yeah.
when it would have
end
been
of 6, early
relevant.
7.
That's when it would have been really relevant to me.
Which 07 was when I was working at the dealership, and that was the first batch that came to the dealership, and I was a salesman for a Chrysler Jeep dealership. And
so for our listeners at home, what is the SRT8?
the SRT8 is a 6.1 liter Hemi V8 with 420 horsepower, 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first production of it.
And I think what's valuable is, I'm going to go back to a conversation I briefly had a minute ago, was we have a unibody vehicle doing this.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've learned our lessons. We learned that we can actually be very productive with unibody. And in fact, we're moving away from our full frame vehicles, which is the Wrangler platform at that time. And, because of course we have the TJ, which, no engineer in their right mind would have stuffed a V8 into a production TJ platform. But obviously by 06 starting in 07, we do have the JK series. And they don't think at all about doing that. In fact, they use a minivan engine instead.
Yep.
But we are running the 6.1 Hemi. Now, when did the 5.7? I feel like the 5.7 was available, which in the rest of the Chrysler offering or the Mopar offering is actually called the RT series. Do you have anything? Was there a 5.7? Because I know the 5.7 Hemi was in the Commander. I know that the 5.7 was.
I
know that it was in the Commander.
I forgot to pull up the stats for that, honestly. I
So-
do remember it being in the Commander, but the Commander was such a heavy vehicle as it
Correct.
was, it didn't feel like it had a 5.7.
And the problem is, and that's what I was going to mention, I never once had a Dub J on my bucket list. I had a ZJ on my bucket list. I never once had a Dub J, but I do still kind of have a Commander on my bucket list, but it would have to be a Hemi Commander.
Have you ever climbed into the back seat of that?
Oh, it's so bad.
There's no room.
Yeah.
I tried once. I did try once many moons ago.
He has too much claustrophobia.
I just got stuck.
It was such a poor design, in my opinion. They could have come out so much cooler than that.
There was so much hype, so much.
I was
pomp and
excited when they came out.
Everybody
When we
was
got them at the
excited.
dealership, it was around the same time as the SRTs.
That's what I remember.
And when it came out, we're all pumped about it. We're like, oh, we're gonna have more room in the vehicle. We're gonna be able to sell this to bigger families. And we got it in, and I'm like, what is that?
Peterson's did a piece on it about how basically this is the tow rig of the future.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to take your family out. It's going to kill the Suburban, the Excursion.
No, didn't even touch that market.
Didn't even touch that market.
Yeah.
Nope.
So I got to tell a quick fun story about the SRT 8 Grand Cherokee. I remember when that was released, and of course, Motor Trend and Top Gear guys and all that have to go out and just give it the beans.
Right.
And the biggest complaint.
I tested it as a salesman for a dealership. Literally put it out on the road, and there may or may not be confirmation of how fast I did, but it does go up to 60 under 5 seconds. I can confirm that.
So the biggest complaint they had about that Jeep when it was released is about 140, I think, on the track. There was some wind noise around the cowl area, and they were.
I can confirm that too.
And they were writing that down, and then someone was like, "Well, that's a Jeep," and they never designed that
Body.
Profile
right
to go over 140 miles an hour.
Right.
And they're like, "Well, that's fair."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe your average consumer is not going to be doing 140 with this vehicle.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. And then 2011 was the year that they stopped making it because gas prices got scary.
Yeah.
And not a fun stat. The gas prices were scary in 2011. That dropped sales on their vehicles, so they dropped that line. But in 2012, they're like, no, we're bringing it back.
Nice.
Yeah.
So they return in 2012, but it comes back as a 6.4 liter Hemi.
Right.
Now it has 470 horsepower. And now has a 5-speed shiftable automatic transmission with the paddle shifts.
Yep.
So that was their change up then.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 14, it became just the SRT. They dropped the 8. I think is very ironic they dropped the 8 this year because this is also when they paired it with the 8-speed transmission.
Huh.
That's funny.
But that's when the launch mode became available, and that's a mode that was inspired by professional driving techniques.
When we talk about sitting around the boardroom or the campfire, I mean, who sat around there and was like, we should take the 8 out of the conversation? I mean, it's an 8-cylinder. It's now an 8-speed.
If anything, you need the 8 more now.
Why wouldn't you leave the 8? Why? Somebody's got to know.
So the reasoning, and I believe, is because now SRT is a brand, and so the SRT line has got the Hellcats, it's got all of those under that.
Or isn't that around the same time where they decided it was a Ram?
Ram, not a Dodge. It's not a Dodge. It's a
I think
Ram.
Ram was a couple years later, but yeah, similar.
But it's the same corporate ideology to be like, we need to confuse the crap out of our good customer base.
So it gets better because in 2015, the year after they dropped the 8, they had to do some kind of change, but not as elaborate. So they only increased the horsepower by 5.
That was the 5 horsepower that was lost at Bonneville. They figured it out.
That's where it is.
They figured it out. It's a different air filter.
Yes.
This allows more fresh air in.
They waxed the windshield.
And in 2018, so now we skip ahead a few years, they release the Trackhawk. Now the Trackhawk is a 6.2 liter supercharged Hemi V8. Again, the SRT was the 470 horsepower. The Trackhawk goes to 707 horsepower, 645 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 60, and how fast?
Yes.
3.3 seconds.
3.5.
Ah!
It's a good thing young Jeff didn't have that at his disposal at the
Oh,
dealership.
I would have been in so much trouble. I wouldn't have a driver's license.
You wouldn't be here.
No, no. And then that advances again till 2021 when the 392 comes out for the Wrangler Rubicon, and that's a Hemi with a 470 horsepower, 470 foot-pounds of torque. 0 to 60 in how fast?
Yes.
4.5.
4.5.
Perfect.
But yet again, all-wheel drive.
Oh, and then
Why?
and then because
Why?
because we're following Scott's trend of the every 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
2023, what happens to the Trackhawk?
They take it away from us.
It still exists,
Oh, okay.
but they downgraded it
Oh.
because now you can only get it with a 4xe that has a 2.0 i4 DOHC DI turbo PHEV engine.
Huh.
That's a lot of letters.
I know.
Alphabet soup.
So
Alphabet soup, great.
instead of
Trackhawk.
707 horsepower, we're down to 375 horsepower
Ouch.
and 470 foot-pounds of torque.
Ouch.
Huh.
They cut it in half almost.
Ouch.
Huh.
So
That's interesting.
because I just spit out a lot of letters, I figured some of the listeners may want to know what those letters are. Scott, what's an I4?
Inline 4,
What's a DOHC?
Dual overhead.
dual overhead cam.
Yep.
Mhm.
And PHEV.
Plug-in hybrid electric vehicle.
There you go.
I'm sorry. I know you asked Scott, but
Well, that's okay.
I was
I-
enthusiastic.
I was.
He didn't have PHEV.
No,
I saw
he
it on
had
his-
the
I
other
saw it
two.
in his eyes. Yeah, I
He
know.
had the other two.
Right. Since that is the world that I'm a purveyor of, and I'm just interested in. I didn't want Scott to stare longingly at you.
No.
That's okay.
In the process.
So
But
so going forward into the future now, we're going to jump to 2025. What's happening in 2025?
full electric.
They take away the 392. It's a final edition. This is the last time it'll be made. It was actually, they tried to take it away in 2024, and someone's like, no, we're going to do one more year out of it. Let's do a final edition.
Huh.
So 2025 is your final edition of 392.
Huh.
Still all-wheel drive, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Got so fired up.
Yeah. So, but that's where it's at, is they're taking it away because we're looking down the pipe of electric vehicles.
Right.
And the electric do have amazing torque.
Yeah, I'm
But-
fascinated with the Trackhawk conversation there, because I wonder if that rating is based on the combustion engine with e-assist. Because I feel like I know the Lightning that they teased as one of their prototype vehicles and stuff had way more horsepower and torque out of it, but it's a hard equation to take a combustion engine and make a direct comparison to that of an EV.
So
there's some loose equations that.
And I don't
done.
necessarily believe it's that is the issue, is that you're looking at more of that torque rating now.
Yeah.
As you switch to electric, the torque is going to mean more, which is why the torque on this one is so much higher than their horsepower, whereas generally it's pretty equivalent, or the horsepower is usually a little higher. even.
And for our listeners at home, and I need somebody to refresh me on this statement. Horsepower is how fast you pull the house,
Mm-hmm.
and torque is
how much house you take with you.
how much house you take with you.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a
Well,
fun little equation.
Greg says something about how far you make it through the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and
Horsepower is how fast you get to the wall.
yep,
Torque is how much wall you take with you when you go through it.
yeah.
Okay. There you go. and ultimately that is a little bit of how our culture is changing. I think it's interesting when we talk about race vehicles, because as kind of a iconic American experience, we loved the competitive concept of racing. And so when we go to those Comanche pickup trucks, they were just racing base 4 cylinders, and the
Yes.
objective was the competition, not necessarily the speed, right?
So there's actually an argument in some of the racing that if you play around with the vehicle too much, now you're making an unfair advantage. And when you have very small 4-cylinder pickup trucks, now it's a race driver's game. Now, who can outdrive the other guy? It's not because you suddenly have 20 more horsepower, or you figured out how to take 50 pounds off the chassis to then beat that guy. Now you actually have to be a good driver. Now you have to be able to be competitive yourself.
And that was part of our American spirit, and that's what people were as equally in love with as they were the vehicle itself. The pursuit of both, I think, is what made us, kind of lust after the concept of racing. I think the challenge we see with the Bonneville Salt Flats and certain drag racing and jet trucks and all of those things that kind of captivate our attention as automotive enthusiasts is that people get hurt. And so when folks were just taking their Jeeps out of basically the run what you brung, kind of model, and they were just taking their Jeeps out to the field and racing them, or going to the sand drags or the mud bog and racing it. It was not necessarily about the fact, are you bringing a performance monster, but are you bringing your best self to the process, your A game. And as we pursued this concept, somewhere along the line, it became about the speed. And I think that ultimately, that's what we're seeing be dialed back. And what, engineers and automotive professionals alike are understanding is that we actually, as the butt dyno, our seats, our butts in seats, experience torque. We don't exactly experience horsepower. We experience horsepower as a bit of a side effect of torque. But torque is kind of what throws you back in your seat and allows you to swing around that semi-truck on the highway.
I mean, a good example to me is it's always fun to drive a slow car fast than it is to drive a fast car slow. And you kind of see that with like NASCAR right now. We have never had such efficient, fast NASCAR cars as we ever have. But now if you tune into a race, it's just and they're slowly crawling on each other because the cars are so evenly matched.
Correct.
And now it is a driver's race. And because they're so fast, it's boring because you're just not pushing the envelope. Or when you're in that little 4-cylinder 4-speed
and you're flogging it for everything
it's got. And your turn in matters, your out turn matters, all that kind of stuff.
And your buddy's doing the same thing over there, and you're just bumper kissing each other back and forth.
That makes an excitement.
That's why I love the dirt track circuit, because there is a lot of people that are building their own, and there are specs they have to stay within and be measured within, but there's not the same restrictions that are on NASCAR race.
That on top of it is how innovation happens. You know, back in the day, you would try to figure out a little better geometry for your suspension, a little different. That's my joke of like rubbing a special oil on the valves. Well, maybe that made it slightly faster, and that's how we figure things out that helps the entire industry move faster. When we're all kind of just in this gridlock of going 200 miles an hour around the racetrack, 50 times and nothing happens, you're not really expanding that.
Yeah, now it's an endurance race only.
Yes.
And I'll leave you folks with this thought, and we do have a great show prepared for you next week, and you will be experiencing the official unveiling of our sign in Grandma's Couch Studio. That is your sign, our listeners, our viewers, and thank you for supporting that process. Early along in our experience at FSJ 4x4, as I continue to kind of plow back into the business, and we started from very meager or humble means in the process. And as I continue to try to get a better trailer and to get a better truck and then to get a big diesel pusher and to do so on and so forth, I was exposed to a concept that arguably changed my life and how I try to look at or approach both our own pursuit professionally and personally. And it has to do with the fact that on any given Friday, Saturday, Sunday race night, at the end of the day, there is a racer who is stepping into his $500,000, $750,000 race trailer RV, has got the full setup, and he's upset and angry at the outcome of the day, and they're mulling over all the ways that they could or should have improved and how they should have done better and the points and this, that, and the other thing. And at the same time, there's an individual who is sitting on the tailgate of his pickup truck looking at the race car that he built for whatever application.
Yep.
And, opening up the cooler with a bunch of other buddies who helped him with the car and talking about, despite the fact that they didn't win, they had like the best day of their lives together.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And so as race Jeeps have, come and gone and changed our industry as a whole, our hope for you would be that no matter where you enter the equation, that that you can find the joy in the vehicle you have, whether it be a 4-cylinder Comanche or a 392 JL or something of in between, that you enjoy your race-inspired Jeep now and in the future.
And speaking of, Daddy Jeep just said, talking about Jeep racing, Ultra 4 is coming to Roush Creek next spring.
And on that note,
Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.